Okay, good.
Okay, so I wanted to welcome the new participants that have come while Ismo was talking. And I see here many people are introducing each other, which is good. So I thought that maybe after the symposium, we can make a document with all our information, affiliation, or research interest, and maybe even make a graph of our network, how the different disciplines are represented among us. We can discuss about this. So the next speaker is Arney. He is professor of mathematics emeritus now at the United States Military Academy. I will say now about his talk. I just wanted to say Chris has agreed to be recorded. If someone of the speakers doesn't want to be recorded, please let us know so that we don't record it. Okay, so Chris is going to talk about the digital philosophy, a meta look at relationships and roles of digital interdisciplines in our modern world. You can go ahead, Chris.
Okay, I hope you can see my talk already, and
I don't see your screen, sorry.
Can you see it?
We don't see your screen, we see you still.
Oh, geez. Okay.
That's the adrenaline of the live talks. That's why it's so interesting. No worries. You can try share screen, the green button.
Yeah, I certainly did that.
Do you want to send it to us? We have given the right to Chris to share the screen, right? Yeah.
When you share a screen, you have to pick the screen, the window you're sharing. Can you do that?
Yeah, I thought I had. Any better now? How about that one?
We still...
Neither. That one.
That's strange.
Now it worked.
You see it?
Now it says that you're sharing the screen, but we don't see it yet, but it must be coming. Yes.
There we go.
Great.
Okay. Sorry for the delay. Little technical part. I am Chris, and going to talk to you a little bit about the hows and whys of building context in a problem-solving course or program. And obviously, network sciences plays big roles in that, as does other kinds of science. And that's why I'm going to kind of merge this into a look at the digital world, the digital era sciences. And we'll get a little bit of team science and other things associated with this talk. So one way to start the conversation about our digital era science is to talk about terminology. And so here's some fields of study and some tools of the trade that are just a beginning list, because I think in 5-10 minutes, this group could certainly double each of these lists. There are many new terms, many new tools, many new ways of problem solving that are important and part of the bigger picture of problem solving in this digital era. So I'm not going to give you the solution to anything. I'm going to talk about an idea, a way to approach this, and see if those things are the things that maybe can enter into the classroom at various levels. So I think I'm talking mostly probably undergrad, college, some high school, and then maybe even some beyond that. Well, there's a network of ways to look at this. And one of the ways would be to take a layer, in this case, maybe this idea of this digital science, and start putting down things that relate to the digital science, whether they be areas of study or tools, and then start connecting them, because what we know is more important is not those two lists, terms or tools or courses, but what's important is how those connect, how they interact, how they process and make problem solving better, or where the obstacles are to do good problem solving. So this would be a place in a class to say, okay, here were some ideas I had. Can you help me kind of flesh out this? Can you help me build the network that connects these terms to one another, or these ideas, these concepts, as a cognitive or mental map? So just start with a crude start, and then build from there. One way to begin teaching. This one might be at freshman level in college. Now this one looks, of course, a little more detailed, but it's still trying to give a big picture. And the big picture here is methodology and problem solving. So there is a methodology, and there's lots of processes. This one, I haven't connected anything, because I don't even know really necessarily where we always start. Now, one way you might want to think about this is up in the upper left, there's problem formalization, and you can kind of go around that top row, and you eventually get to data concepts, and then you get to maybe some network ideas, and you get to more statistics, and then you get in the second row down more maybe social science and policy and decision makers and marketing and other things about this process. So again, start here, work on connections, many feedbacks. Where are the feedback loops? Why do you think this way as a way to look at a big picture of what's happening? So, oops. Now, boy. Way back when, it used to be kind of science used to be simpler. We conducted experiments, we explained what we learned, and we conducted some more experiments. I think you can see that that's not how we do things today. There's a lot going on, and many of these things that are going on are big, new trends in science. Science has changed. Now, this is more maybe for the high school level. High schoolers aren't going to necessarily think about things in process and networks, but they might think about structures and products. And these are words that they may know most of these words. They certainly know what a problem and a solution is. They know what a network and a policy and a plan are. They know about models and information, robots, maybe data structures. They may not know about collective intelligence, but I always plant these little herrings in the corners that if a group of students didn't know about, hopefully someone will ask about collective intelligence and then say, wait, this collective intelligence kind of links lots of these things together, and maybe that's where we need to learn something new. Now, a year and a half ago when we were in Vermont, and I gave a little talk about some of the ideas of a methodology that showed really for students what they were doing. And here, the idea here is that this is just a methodology, but it's one that shows the products, the pictures of the products, shows the type of people that produce those products, and then in the yellow shows the processes that move through this methodology to actually then get to possibly a solution to a problem. So the idea is that there is this way through a methodology to solve a problem, and you can visualize it pretty well. At least I would think, I know that my students at kind of the junior, senior level in college can do this, and they can produce these things and do produce these things as they solve a problem. Now this one's a little different. This is the why we teach this. So this huge PowerPoint display was presented by a military staff to a military commander. And this military commander, when he saw this, said, wait, this is, I don't want, this is way too confusing, way too much. This is beyond my comprehension. I don't know what you're doing with this graphic, which is much like the one before, except, well, maybe a few hundred times more complex, or more filled with steps. So obviously the staff that put it out were disappointed because they thought they were simplifying their discussion by providing this. And the decision maker was overwhelmed. Now, to this decision maker's credit, a week later, he said to his staff, now wait, I am learning why you showed me this. I'm learning about this, and I like it. He saw that this visual map was one that he really did have in his head. He knew about these things, and now he could see it, refine it, do something with it. It put him into this process. And that's why we have to teach this to high school people, to college, undergraduate. This man, who was at the senior level of his profession, had never seen a map like this. He had never learned about these kind of networks. He had never seen any of this, yet he realized pretty quickly that this was the way he needed to think about things, and it really helped him. He's reflected on it many times since. And so this is a story of kind of the why. We don't want our students to be like him, whatever, 20, 30, 40 years in the future. We want our students to see what's going on and understand these connections and keep building on them no matter how they're making their decisions in the future. So that's the why. Now, I want to be pretty quick on this because I know I'm coming up close to the end. What happens when we do this, when we show the bigger contextual picture, we do reveal things like paradoxes and the borders and the dichotomies that are all out there in this world. And so we don't want to avoid them completely, but obviously we can't, resolve them or teach them. But they're, those are important, kind of like the assumptions. Are we assuming that we want to be more embrace complexity, or are we assuming that we're really looking for something simple for understanding? Are we taking a more multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary approach? It's kind of like the reductive and the non-reductive part here. If you can divide and conquer in a discipline point of view, reductive, then you want to be multidisciplinary. If you can't do that, if you need to be holistic and have a more interdisciplinary place, we need to know that. We meaning the problem solvers. Static, dynamic, and empirical theoretical are all obvious things that we also have to resolve. I'm not sure that where we put in ergodic and non-ergodic. And just real quick, if you don't know what ergodic is, it means that in one dimension, we can take a whole bunch of people, or a whole bunch of measures, and use that in another dimension to make a interactive decision, that these two things in some sense have a viable relationship. Quick example, if you're at Disney World and you want to know, well, what over the next year, what are we going to do in terms of marketing and fixing up our rides? Then one day in Disneyland, you can take you can take 1,000 surveys and analyze all the things that people said and come up with kind of an average. And then in that average is going to then build your future plan for the next year. The one-day slice then is correlated with the 1 year ahead plans. In the stock market, a different one maybe in the stock market, you do the same with 1,000 stocks. One day or 1 week, you analyze all these stocks and figure out what they all are doing. And then you as a decision maker or as an advisor decides what an individual should do with stocks over the next year, what stocks to buy, when to sell, etc. Puts a plan based on 1 day's or 1 week's data, extrapolate to the future. Well, if you can do that, you're living in an ergodic world. If you believe that your problem is non-ergodic, then you can't obviously do that kind of analysis. However, just from my look at the world, oftentimes we try to use ergodic-based mathematics, and yet we're in a non-ergodic-based problem, maybe to the point of 10 to 90%, when the world is much more non-ergodic than it is ergodic. And so we have these things backwards. In math, it used to be linear and nonlinear. You know, we were caught up in making sure things linearized. But in order to actually make the breakthroughs that we need, because we know things are multi-level, multi-scaled, multi-temporal, lots of things going on, we need to fix that. Now, let me just conclude. This is back in a more basic level. And the basic level here is that this is a narrative. If you're going to talk to maybe some high school people, and if you want, this is a map, this is a physical map of an archipelago. And this particular archipelago has islands in which the people that solve problems in the same methodology kind of live. Statistician, physicist over on the right, networkers in the bottom left, and math, and et cetera, data science. And what has to happen for these people to cooperate is they have to cross the bridge, or take the ferry, or get on an airplane, or ride the railway to really get together with their colleagues. And certainly you could explain this to high schoolers that this is a way to do things. But in a digital, more teamed approach, we have a whole federation, a whole nation, if you will, of people. And sure, they may live in different places and do things, but they can all meet at Starbucks in the middle. They all have, when a speaker comes, they can all go to the talk. They don't need, in some sense, to cross borders and boundaries and straits and seas to understand each other and work together. Team science, interdisciplinary team science, where the other one could be team science, but it's all disciplinary and it's folks. So if you don't know much about ergodics, you can read Todd Rose, and that completes my talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Do we have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Chris, it was very interesting to hear your talk and also see you presenting that network from the military.
Oh, right, yeah.
Was it? I think it was about Afghanistan or something.
Yes, it was.
How do you feel about the stress that there's being given on analytical skills in education as compared to synthesizing skills, teaching synthesizing skills in education? So teaching kids and students to actually make those connections. I call that the synthesizing skills instead of the analyzing skills. And in the education that I know of, there's a little more stress on analytical skills. So kids and students are being taught to deconstruct problems, but they're not really taught to, synthesize the problems again, to actually see the connections between all the components of the problem. Do you see also that difference in stress in educational curricula?
Well, what you just said is exactly what I wanted to say, and all those words that I used, you consolidated it much easier, much quicker. But yes, I agree with you that these synthesizing skills are very important, especially for people who are going to, some sense, lead, be creative. One of the things I didn't mention is I think this bigger context allows for people to get out of a box and see another creative way to move forward. Even if they haven't studied the other ways, they still know that they exist, and they say they're more free now. It's kind of like opening up the box, this synthesizing idea. Even if they are going to be analytic problem solvers, they still, by learning this synthesis kind of approach, I think it helps. So I taught at the military academy, where we think we're developing leaders. And almost all these people really did see the power, if you will, of understanding a bigger picture of what they were doing in their basic analysis.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. So, can we say to the teachers here that the message is to try to show the connections between the processes for anything they teach to the students? Can this be a conclusion from your talk? What would you?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it clearly, Evelyn, I'm sorry.
No, I was thinking if we want a punchline from your talk to the teachers who don't know much network science, could it be to try to teach the students to see connections between all the processes of what they're doing so that they can have this bigger picture you're saying?
Yes, I think, and of course, we know that if they build the connections themselves, if they draw that line that connects, and they, then they have ownership of that line, if you will. Then they learn and understand the network concept of this, bigger picture. Then if you just give them, the big thing and say, well, this is what's happening. That I don't think as a teacher will work very often. But what may work is start with something and have them construct from there. That was the point of the earlier slides.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Okay, so we can continue.